In this video, we're going to be thinking about the reading section of the IELTS test. Now, you probably already know that the reading section has 3 passages that you have 40 questions to answer about. Now, these 40 questions are going to be in a variety of styles. They're not all going to be the same kind of questions. And it's really important that before you go into the test, you know what kind of questions to expect and that you've practiced answering these styles of question before you go into the test. You don't want to have any surprises and you don't want to be nervous and unsure about what you're going to see when you're in that test situation. Now, of course, there's no way of predicting what the 3 passages are going to be about, but you can know what kinds of questions you're going to get. So all I'm going to do in this video is go through the different types of questions that you might get when you're in the test. And these categories that I'm going to give you, well, they cover all the types of questions you're going to get, so there shouldn't be any surprises when you go into the test. Also, what I'm going to do in some of the future videos is look at these types of questions in more detail and go through some examples and think about really helping people to build up their vocabulary so they can get a higher score in the reading test. I mean, really, the reading test is a test of your vocabulary and how deeply you understand vocabulary in English. So it's important that you spend time building up all of the words that you know that are kind of connected with the style of questions that you're going to get in the IELTS reading test. Anyway, let's get on and think about the different question types that you're going to get in the test. I'll just go through them really quickly and show you an example of it really quickly on screen so you can see what it looks like. I'm not going to go into any detail really about how you should be answering these types of questions or exam technique. I'm literally just going to show you the question, explain what the question type is, and then move on to the next one. So it shouldn't really take too long. So let's get on with it. Now, the first type that I want to show you, and a really, really common type, you're always going to get a question like this when you're in the reading test, is a true, false, not given question. Now, basically here you can see the exam gives you some statements. Okay, you can see here we've got kind of 3 different statements. Now, it might be 3, it might be 4, it might be 5. It just depends on the number of questions. Each one is 1 question. And of course, you're given the instruction to kind of say whether the statements agree with the information given in the passage. Now, of course, then on your answer sheet, you can write whether it's true, yes, it does agree, it's false, no, it doesn't agree, or not given, the information is just not there in the text. Of course, what you have to do here is read the statement very carefully and then look for where the related information is in the passage and then read very carefully, very, very carefully to see whether it is true, false, or not given. A lot of students find this type of question quite hard. They do try to trick you a little bit with the wording, and that's why you have to read very carefully and you have to have a very deep understanding of the vocabulary being used in the statement and in the passage, because often they use synonyms that, well, you have to be aware of what both of the words mean to get the right answer. So that's the first question type I wanted to show you. And the next question type is really very similar to a true, false, not given. It's the yes, no, not given. Now, really, the only difference between a yes, no, not given question and a true, false, not given question is that a yes no, not given question gives you statements that are opinions. And you've got to say, well, whether those opinions match with the opinions given in the passage. Now, it might be the opinion of the writer, but it might be an opinion of someone the writer is writing about. Now, the difference between this and, of course, the true, false, not given is that, well, true, false, not given was all about fact, right? Facts in the passage and not opinions in the passage. But really, you're doing the same thing. You're finding the information in the passage and then saying whether it agrees with the statement that they give you. So that's the first two types. And of course, these are quite difficult types of questions. I find that a lot of students struggle with, and it's one that we can, in the future, spend a lot of time practicing and looking at samples of. Now, the next type of question is a gap fill question. Now, again, this is quite a common style of question. Generally, you're going to get a gap fill question. When you get it, it's going to be giving you some kind of sentence, maybe a paragraph, maybe even some kind of diagram. But there's going to be missing information. There's going to be gaps in the sentence or paragraph or diagram. Now, of course, what you have to do is find the corresponding information in the passage and then, well, find what the missing word is. Of course, sometimes you're actually given a box with some words to choose from in, and sometimes you're not. You can see in this example you're not, and you've just got to rely on the words that are in the passage. Again, not the easiest type of question, and one that a lot of students do struggle with, so one that we'll be looking at more in the future. Now, the next type of question is a multiple choice question, something we're all probably quite familiar with already, but basically you're given a question and then you're given some options. Maybe 3 options, maybe 4, maybe even more. It does depend on the question that you get in the test, but you've always given a number of options and you've got to choose the right one that corresponds with what it says in the passage. That's a multiple choice one. Can be quite difficult because the question gives quite a lot of information and there's a lot to read there, as well as reading what's in the passage and locating the right information that corresponds with that question in the passage. So that's the 4th type. Let's move on to look at the 5th type. That is short answer questions. Again, maybe this one isn't quite as common as the types we've looked at so far, but it's possible that you get this style of question where they just give you a question about something in the text and you've got to give a very short answer. Usually, like you can see here, it's just a 1-word answer. It could be a 2-word answer, never really more than that. You're not answering here in full sentences. Remember, this is not a writing test, it's a reading test. So the question will relate to something in the passage. You've got to find the right part of the passage where the information is, and then, well, write down the correct answer. Now, so far, we've looked at 5 types of questions, and these 5 types, I think, generally can be a bit easier, or at least quicker to answer than the next few types we're going to be looking at. This is because the types we've looked at so far are kind of in the order of the information given in the passage. So what I mean here is if the first question, the answer is located at the top of the passage, then the second question will be just underneath that, the third question just underneath that. It's not mixed up, right? So you don't have to spend time looking back at what you've looked at before if it's the following question. You know it's going to be after that in the passage. Now, the problem with the next type of questions we're going to be looking at is that they're not in order. They're going to be out of order, and often this means it takes longer to find what you're looking for. Now, there's ways and techniques to make this a bit easier. Sometimes I will tell students to kind of look at these five types of questions first before you look at the next 4 types of questions, even if they come before. You look at them afterwards. But there are many ways to approach the next few types. Now, let me explain what these types of questions are, where you're kind of having to spend a lot of time trying to locate the information. The first type, and often a really very challenging type of question, is a matching paragraph headings question. So, of course, here, what they're going to be doing is giving you a list of headings. Now, these are headings for the paragraphs in the passage. And then, of course, they'll give you a choice of paragraphs that you can choose for each of these headings. And you've got to match the headings with the paragraphs. It won't be all of the paragraphs. They'll just choose some of them. There's going to be more headings than paragraphs that you have to match them with. So that's always a bit of a challenge, right? Choosing the right heading. But it's one that there are certain techniques that can make it a bit easier, which we will talk about in the future. But that's the first type, where you're going to be kind of struggling maybe at first to find the right place in the text, because the first question might be the last paragraph and the second question might be the first paragraph, and you can imagine this is going to take a long time to kind of locate the information. And this is why sometimes it's better to look at kind of the first 5 types of questions first, because at least then you have a kind of idea about what's in the text already. Now, another type of question, similar to matching the paragraph headings, is matching paragraph information. So, of course, they give you some statements here, and then you have to match those statements with the correct paragraph, where that information is in the passage, which paragraph contains that information. Again, this can be challenging because you've got so much to look at. And that's another kind of matching one. You'll notice that all these other types that we're looking at here are matching kind of information, headings, things like this. Now, the next one is matching sentence endings. Now, to be honest, this is not a very common type of question that comes up, but it does come up and you have to be ready for it. You have to have practiced this before you go into the test. But basically here, and you can see, you're going to get the beginning of sentences, and then you're going to get the endings of those sentences, and you have to match them together following information that is in the text. So it's still a kind of matching exercise that you're doing here, and you'll see a lot of it, this kind of thing. I mean, even if you're not finding what's in the passage, there's a chance you can work out some of the kind of options that are going to be completely wrong, just down to grammar or context. But it can still be challenging, again, because you've got to locate the information within the paragraph. Now, the final type of question is matching other features. So again, another kind of matching task, but they're going to give you some statements that give either maybe some opinions or maybe facts or findings, very often opinions, and then you're going to be matching them with maybe a person, and most often it is a person, or it could be a period of time or some other feature, but you're matching these things together. Again, not the easiest question to do, again, because of time. It often takes a long time because it's not in the order of the text. But again, most of the time with this style of question, it's going to be giving you people's opinions that are in the text. And you've got to match those opinions with the person. You can see that's the example here that you can see. But there we go. that covers the different types of questions that you get in the reading test. What I would like to do in future videos on the reading test is look at these questions in more detail and maybe think a bit about techniques that you can use for different questions and do some practice together. Look at some sample questions and kind of think about what the answers are and then analyze the answers and go through them together. And I think this would be very useful for students to help them build up their vocabulary over time, because that's what's important really for the reading test, is that you're building up your vocabulary. Again, like, one good thing is doing this with actual kind of focused IELTS reading practice that we'll be doing, but also outside of that, you need to be doing more reading in general, just enjoying the process of building up your vocabulary gradually over time. But there we go. Hopefully this video was useful for you. If it was, then do remember to click the like button, and if you haven't already, remember to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any similar videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you again in the next video.